I have been on the bench for over 40 years, and I thought I had seen every type of arrogance that money could buy. But nothing prepared me for what walked into my courtroom on the morning of October 17th at exactly 10:47 a.m. You know what really gets under my skin? It is not the crime itself. I have dealt with criminals my whole career. What bothers me is when someone thinks they are above the law, above decency, above basic human respect. And that morning I was about to meet someone who embodied all of that and more. Now, before I tell you what happened in that courtroom, let me ask you something. Do you believe that justice should be the same for everyone, no matter how much money they have? If you do, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you are about to hear will restore your faith that sometimes, just sometimes, the system actually works. The case on my docket seemed simple enough at first. A parking violation that escalated into something much bigger. The defendant was a 23-year-old named Ashton Carmichael III. Yes, the third. His family owned half the commercial real estate in Providence. His father was Richard Carmichael, Jr., the same man whose name was on the hospital wing, the university library, and about a dozen other buildings around the city. When Ashton walked into my courtroom, I noticed everything. You learn to read people after 4 decades of this work. He wore a navy blue Brioni suit that probably cost more than most people make in 2 months. His shoes were custom Berluti, the kind you have to wait 6 months to get made. On his wrist was a rose gold Patek Philippe watch, reference number 5711, worth about $200,000. I know this because my bailiff, Tommy Rodriguez, used to work security at luxury watch stores before he came to work for me. But it was not the clothes that told me who this kid was. It was the way he walked. He strolled in like he was entering a country club, not a courtroom. He had this smirk on his face, this half smile that said he found the whole thing amusing. His lawyer, Martin Hofstede from Hofstede and Associates, one of those downtown firms that charge $800 an hour, walked beside him carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost $3,000.
Buckle up, guys. Today we're diving into a courtroom showdown that starts with pure entitlement and ends in total accountability. The judge, after 40 years on the bench, sets the stage by describing the arrogance he's about to witness. Enter Ashton Carmichael III, a spoiled 23-year-old heir dripping in luxury, a $200,000 watch, custom suit, and that unmistakable smirk of someone who believes rules don't apply. His high-powered lawyer trails behind. Then comes the stark contrast. Sarah Chun, exhausted pediatric oncology nurse in scrubs, single mom fighting for her kids. The judge paints the picture of wealth versus quiet dignity, priming us for the clash ahead.
Then I saw the victim. Her name was Sarah Chen. She was a 47-year-old nurse at Rhode Island Hospital. She had worked there for 22 years in the pediatric oncology ward. That means she spent more than 2 decades taking care of children with cancer. Sarah stood there in her nurse's scrubs because she had come straight from a double shift. She looked exhausted. I could see the tiredness in her eyes, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from caring for sick children while barely making ends meet yourself. Sarah was a single mother. Her husband had died 4 years earlier from a heart attack, leaving her with 2 kids to raise on a nurse's salary. Her daughter Emma was 14 and her son David was 11. David had juvenile diabetes, which meant constant monitoring, insulin supplies, doctor visits, the kind of financial burden that never stops. The incident had happened 3 days earlier, on October 14th at approximately 7:35 p.m. Sarah had just finished her shift. She was walking to her car in the hospital employee parking lot, carrying her bag and thinking about getting home to her kids. She had parked in her assigned spot, number E47, the same spot she had used for 15 years. But when she got there, she found a white Lamborghini Huracan Evo blocking her car, not parked next to it, blocking it completely. The Lambo was parked diagonally across 2 spots, and one of those spots was hers. Her Honda Civic was trapped. She could not get out. Sarah looked around for the owner. She waited 15 minutes in the cold October evening. She was already late to pick up David from his friend's house where he was supposed to check his blood sugar at 8 p.m.
The incident unfolds 3 days earlier in the hospital parking lot. Sarah finishes a grueling shift, heads to her assigned spot, only to find a white Lamborghini blocking her Honda Civic completely. She waits 15 freezing minutes, calls security, nothing. Desperate and late, to check her diabetic son's blood sugar, she calls police non-emergency. Officer Brennan arrives, confirms the plate's linked to Ashton's family, and issues a $100 ticket for illegal parking in an employee zone. The scene highlights Sarah's quiet struggle against casual disregard from someone who parks wherever he pleases for convenience.
p.m. She tried calling the hospital security to make an announcement. Nothing. Finally, at 7:52 p.m., she called the police non-emergency line. Officer Michael Brennan arrived at 8:15 p.m., badge number 4721. He had been on the Providence police force for 19 years. Mike took one look at the situation and shook his head. He ran the plates on the Lamborghini. They came back registered to Richard Carmichael Jr., with a note in the system that said the vehicle was primarily driven by his son, Ashton. Mike wrote a ticket for illegal parking in a hospital employee zone, $100 fine, but here is where it gets interesting. While Mike was writing the ticket at exactly 8:23 p.m., Ashton came strolling out of the hospital. He was not visiting a sick relative. He was not there for any medical reason. He later admitted he had been visiting a girl who worked in the hospital gift shop. He had parked in the employee lot because it was closer to the side entrance. When Mike told him he was getting a ticket, Ashton laughed. Actually laughed. Officer Brennan told me later that the kid said, and I quote, $100? That's what I tipped my barber. Then Ashton looked at Sarah, looked at her faded scrubs and her tired face and said, Sorry about your spots, sweetheart. Maybe you should buy a nicer car so people notice it. Sarah.
Ashton finally appears, fresh from visiting a gift shop worker, not a patient. When told about the ticket, he laughs outright. $100. That's what I tip my barber. He mocks Sarah directly, calling her sweetheart, and suggesting she buy a nicer car. Officer Brennan, father to a nurse, adds a second $100 ticket for obstructing traffic. Ashton shrugs, revs his engine loud enough to trigger alarms, and speeds off. What could have ended with a simple fine payment spirals, because entitlement refuses to accept even minor consequences.
Sarah did not say anything back. She just wanted to get home to her son. But Officer Brennan saw red. Mike has a daughter who is a nurse. He took it personally, so he added another ticket, obstructing traffic, another $100. Ashton just shrugged, got in his Lamborghini, and drove away with the engine roaring loud enough to set off car alarms. Now, a normal person would have just paid the $200 fine and moved on with their life. But Ashton was not a normal person. He decided to contest it. His lawyer filed a motion claiming the parking lot signage was unclear and that his client had made an honest mistake. They demanded a court hearing. That is how we all ended up in my courtroom 3 days later. I read through the file that morning before the hearing. It seemed straightforward. Rich kid parks illegally, gets tickets, tries to fight it because he can afford to waste everyone's time. I figured I would hear the case, uphold the fines, maybe add a little lecture about respect.
In court, Ashton's lawyer argues unclear signage and no real obstruction. The judge reviews clear bodycam photos showing signs and the blocked car, ready to rule against them. He asks Ashton personally, anything to add? Ashton stands, smirking, downplays it as a blown out of proportion mistake. He's willing to pay the first $100, but calls the second ridiculous. He beams like he's negotiated a steal. The arrogance is palpable. He treats the courtroom like a minor inconvenience he can talk his way out of.
And move on to the next case. I had no idea what was actually coming. I called the courtroom to order at 10:47 a.m. Case number 2847CV, the City of Providence versus Ashton Carmichael III, parking violations. My court clerk, Dorothy Martinez, had been with me for 31 years. She knew how to read my mood. She glanced at me, and I could tell she was thinking the same thing I was. Here we go again. Another entitled kid wasting court time. Ashton stood up with his lawyer. Martin Hofstede began his presentation. Your Honor, my client wishes to contest these citations on the grounds that the parking lot in question lacks proper signage indicating employee-only parking. Furthermore, the second citation for obstructing traffic is unwarranted as my client was not blocking any active road.
Sarah, reluctantly present as a potential witness, speaks softly. She understands mistakes happen, isn't angry, just wants rules enforced so nurses can get home after long shifts. Her humble, dignified plea stands in sharp contrast to Ashton's attitude. Then Ashton scoffs audibly and mutters to his lawyer that she's milking this for sympathy. The courtroom chills. The judge hears it, jaw tightening. This quiet moment exposes raw contempt beneath the surface entitlement.
I looked at the evidence. I had photos from Officer Brennan's body cam, clear as day, signs everywhere marking employee parking, and Sarah's car completely blocked in. I was about to rule against the motion when I decided to hear from the defendant himself. "Mr. Carmichael," I said, "do you have anything to say on your behalf?" Ashton stood up. That smirk was still there. "Your Honor, I think this whole thing is being blown way out of proportion. It was a parking spot. I made a mistake. I am willing to pay the $100 fine for the parking. But the second ticket is ridiculous. I do not think I should have to pay that one." "You are willing to pay $100 but not $200? I asked. "Exactly," he said. He actually looked pleased with himself, like he had just made a brilliant negotiation. I looked at Sarah Chen. She was sitting quietly in the gallery. She had not even planned to come, but the prosecutor's office had asked her to be present as a witness if needed. She sat there in her scrubs, probably losing hourly wages to be here. "Ms. Chen," I said, "would you like to say anything?" Sarah stood up. She looked uncomfortable being the center of attention. "Your Honor, I just want to say that I understand mistakes happen. I am not angry. I just want to make sure the parking rules are followed so other nurses can get to their cars after long shifts. That is all." Her voice was soft, respectful. She was not asking for revenge or punishment, just basic decency and fairness. It made what happened next even worse. Ashton actually scoffed. I heard it, a little derisive sound in his throat. He turned slightly to his lawyer and said something I was not supposed to hear. "But in 40 years you develop good ears," he said.
A last-minute police report lands. The night before, Ashton ran a red light, smelled of alcohol, refused sobriety tests initially, failed them, blew 0.11, above the 0.08 limit, and was arrested for DUI. Released on bail hours before court, he dismissed officers as "you people wasting his time." The judge reads it, blood pressure rising. This isn't isolated arrogance. It's a pattern of reckless disregard for law and other safety, revealed at the worst possible moment for Ashton.
She is really milking this for sympathy. The temperature in my courtroom dropped about 20 degrees. I felt my jaw tighten. But I am a professional. I have dealt with worse. I was about to deliver my ruling when my clerk Dorothy leaned over and whispered, "Judge, the prosecutor just sent over additional evidence. It came in this morning." I took the file she handed me. It was a police report filed at 11:47 p.m. the previous night, October 16th, just hours before this hearing. I started reading, and I felt my blood pressure rising with every line. Now let me pause here for just a second. What I am about to tell you is going to make you angry. It made me angry. But here is what I want you to do. If you think people like Ashton Carmichael need to be held accountable, if you think the system should work for everyone and not just the wealthy, then drop a comment right now and tell me what you would do if you were in my position, because I promise you what I decided to do next was not in any textbook they gave me in law school. The police report was filed by Officer Jennifer Santos, badge number 5892. She had been patrolling downtown Providence around 11:15 p.m. on October 16th when she observed a white Lamborghini Huracan running a red light at the intersection of Westminster.
The judge confronts Ashton about the DUI arrest. His smirk vanishes. His lawyer objects it's irrelevant. The judge shuts it down. Character matters here. He lists Ashton's disrespect, mocking the victim, zero remorse, drunk driving that could have killed someone. Then he details Sarah's life, 22 years caring for dying children, $30 per hour, raising kids alone after losing her husband. Ashton blocked her, mocked her. Silence falls. Ashton reddens, finally sensing real consequences.
Endurance. She pulled the vehicle over at 11:18 p.m. The driver was Ashton Carmichael III. When Officer Santos approached the vehicle, she immediately smelled alcohol. She asked Ashton if he had been drinking. According to her report, he said, I had a couple drinks at dinner. So what? Do you know who my father is? Officer Santos asked him to step out of the vehicle. He refused. She asked again. He said, I am not doing anything until my lawyer gets here. You are wasting my time over nothing. Eventually, after Officer Santos explained that refusing to cooperate would result in additional charges, Ashton got out of the car. She administered a field sobriety test. He failed. She then used a breathalyzer at 11:34 p.m. His blood alcohol content was 0.111. The legal limit in Rhode Island is 0.08. Ashton was arrested for DUI. He was taken to the station, processed, and released on bail at 2:23 a.m. The bail was posted by his father. The whole thing had happened less than 12 hours before he showed up in my courtroom to argue about a parking ticket. But here is the part that made my hands shake as I read the report. When Officer Santos was processing him, when she was doing the paperwork, Ashton said to her, "This is such garbage. I am supposed to be in court in the morning for some stupid parking thing. Now I have to deal with this too. You people love to waste my time." You people. As if everyone who was not born into wealth was beneath him. As if the officers, the nurses, the regular working people were just obstacles in his path. I closed the folder. I looked up at Ashton Carmichael III standing there in his $10,000 suit with his expensive watch and his smirk. I looked at Sarah Chen in her scrubs, and I made a decision. "Mr. Carmichael," I said, "I have just been made aware of your arrest last night for driving under the influence. Is that correct?" The smirk disappeared.
The judge reveals Ashton's Instagram video from the night before, laughing in a luxury restaurant, toasting to parking tickets and poor people problems, mocking Sarah as low-earning and overreacting, saying contesting it makes a point. Posted at 9:47 p.m., just before his DUI stop. The clip plays on the courtroom monitor. Dead silence. Sarah covers her mouth. Gallery members react in shock and anger. The judge lets the humiliation sink in, connecting the drinking directly to the arrest.
His lawyer jumped up. "Your Honor, that is a separate matter not relevant to these proceedings." "Sit down, counselor," I said. My voice was calm but firm. "It is relevant because it speaks to a pattern of behavior. It speaks to character. And in my courtroom, character matters." I turned back to Ashton. "You came in here today to argue about a $200 fine. You think it is funny. You think it is beneath you. You made a disrespectful comment to the victim. You showed zero remorse. And now I find out that last night, less than 12 hours ago, you were arrested for drunk driving. You could have killed someone. Do you understand that?" Ashton's face was turning red. "Your Honor, I am not finished," I said. "Let me tell you about Sarah Chen. She has worked as a pediatric oncology nurse for 22 years. Do you know what that means? That means she takes care of children who are dying, children who are in pain. She does it for about $30 an hour. She does it on double shifts. She does it while raising 2 kids alone because her husband died. And you blocked her car because you could not be bothered to park in a legal spot. You called her sweetheart and mocked her car. You showed her the same contempt you show everyone who is not as rich as you." The courtroom was completely silent. Sarah had tears in her eyes. Ashton was staring at me with a look I had seen before. It was the look of someone who was starting to realize they might actually face consequences. But I was not done. Not even close. "Your Honor," Martin Hofstede tried again, "my client is willing to pay both."
Federal agents interrupt. FBI Special Agent Kowalski approaches with a warrant. Ashton is under investigation for securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, running a $2.4 million crypto scam targeting students. They've tracked him here. The judge notes the serious charges, built over months. Ashton's world crumbles further. Panic replaces arrogance. He begs his lawyer to act. The lawyer admits he was only hired for parking. Layers of deceit peel away in real time.
"Fines. Can we please move forward?" $200, I said. "You think $200 is justice here. Let me explain something to you, counselor, that $200 is what Ms. Chen spends on her son's insulin supplies in a week. It is what she pays for groceries. To your client, it is nothing. It is less than nothing. He said it himself. That is what he tips his barber." I pulled out my phone. I am old, but I am not a dinosaur. I know how social media works. My grandson had shown me how to use Instagram. And the night before, after I had read the initial case file, something had bothered me. So I had looked up Ashton Carmichael III on Instagram. Mr. Carmichael, I said, do you have an Instagram account under the handle at Ashton Carmichael 3? He hesitated. Yes. And did you post a video to that account yesterday evening, October 16th at approximately 9:47 p.m.? His face went pale. His lawyer looked confused. Your Honor, I'm not sure what... Let me refresh everyone's memory, I said. I had asked my clerk to pull up the video on the courtroom monitor. We have a system for showing evidence. Dorothy pulled it up. There on the screen was Ashton sitting in what looked like an expensive restaurant. You could see bottles of wine on the table, the kind that cost hundreds of dollars. He was with 3 other young men, all dressed like they had just walked off a yacht, and Ashton was talking to the camera. So I have to go to court tomorrow, he was saying in the video, laughing. Some nurse got all mad because I parked in her spot at the hospital. Now I have to wake up early and go downtown and pretend to care. The fine is like $100. I spend more than that on lunch. But my dad's lawyer says I should contest it just to make a point. Show them they cannot push us around.
The judge delivers the ruling. Guilty on both parking charges, $200 total fines. But he adds contempt of court for the mocking video. 100 hours community service at Rhode Island Hospital's Pediatric Oncology Ward, supervised by Sarah Chun. Ashton will mop floors, clean bedpans, witness real work and compassion. The courtroom erupts in murmurs and claps. The judge is teaching respect the hard way, forcing Ashton to see the human cost of his actions up close.
Honestly, it is kind of hilarious. This lady probably makes like 30 grand a year, and she is all upset about a parking spot, like, get a better job, you know? His friends in the video laughed. They clinked glasses. Ashton took a sip of wine and said, to parking tickets and poor people problems. Then the video ended. The courtroom was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Sarah Chen had her hand over her mouth. Some of the people in the gallery looked shocked. Others looked angry. I let the silence hang there for a long moment. I wanted it to sink in. Then I spoke. Mr. Carmichael, you posted that video at 9:47 p.m. At 11:18 p.m., less than 2 hours later, you were pulled over for drunk driving. You were drinking in that video, were you not? He did not answer. The wine you were toasting with, you drove home after that, and you got arrested. Do you see the connection? Do you understand what you did? His lawyer was frantically whispering to him. Ashton looked like he wanted to disappear.
An additional $10,000 fine, paid directly to Sarah for lost wages, emotional distress, and consequences. Ashton protests, impossible. The judge stands firm, appeal if you want, but the video and DUI become exhibits. Then Ashton's father bursts in, furious, until he sees the FBI. His face drains, disappointment replaces anger. He quietly asks his son what he's done. The family's facade cracks under the weight of accumulated failures.
But I still was not done, because right then, at 11:03 a.m., according to the courtroom clock, the door to my courtroom opened, and 2 people walked in. One was a woman in her early 50s wearing a federal agent's badge. The other was a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. The woman approached the bench. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption. I am Special Agent Lisa Kowalski with the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. May I approach? Now you have got to be kidding me, I thought. But I said, approach. She handed me a document. Your Honor, we have been investigating Mr. Ashton Carmichael III for securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. We received a tip that he would be in court today. We have a federal arrest warrant. We were hoping to execute it after your proceedings conclude, but given the situation, we wanted to inform the court. I looked at the warrant. It was real. It was signed by a federal judge. The charges were serious. According to the document, Ashton had been running a cryptocurrency investment scheme targeting college students. He had defrauded victims out of approximately $2.4 million. The FBI had been building the case for 7 months. You think you have...
Agent Kowalski arrests Ashton on federal charges, reads rights, cuffs him in open court. His father watches in shame, Sarah in tearful relief. As Ashton is let out, he passes Sarah. They lock eyes briefly. She gives a slight nod, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. She remains the bigger person. After, she thanks the judge, but says she doesn't need the money, just respect. He insists she deserves it for medical bills, education funds. Her genuine smile closes the human arc.
Seen everything, and then the universe surprises you. Okay, I need you to stick with me here because what happened in the next few minutes was absolutely wild. If you are still watching this, you are part of something special. Hit that like button right now and let the algorithm know that real justice stories matter. Because this is the part where everything comes together. I looked at the federal agent. I looked at Ashton. I looked at his lawyer, who now looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. And I looked at Sarah Chen. Mr. Carmichael, I said slowly, it appears you have much bigger problems than a parking ticket. Ashton was panicking now. You could see it in his eyes. The arrogance was gone. The smirk was gone. He looked at his lawyer desperately. Martin, do something. Martin Hofstede looked at me. Your Honor, I was retained only for the parking violation matter. I was not aware of any federal investigation. I'm sure you were not, I said. Agent Kowalski, are you taking him into custody now? After your ruling, Your Honor, she said, we want to respect the court's process. I sat back in my chair. I took a deep breath, and I thought about my father. He was a truck driver in Providence for 40 years. He drove trucks to support our family. He taught me that respect is not about money. It is about character. He taught me that the law should be blind to wealth and status. He taught me that sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales. Here is my ruling, I said. On the charge of illegal parking in a hospital employee zone, I find you guilty. Fine of $100. On the charge of obstructing traffic, I find you guilty. Fine of $100. But I am adding something else. Ashton looked up with hope in his eyes, like maybe I was going to go easy on him. I am adding a charge of contempt of court, I said. Not for anything you did in this courtroom today, but for that video you posted. You made a mockery of these proceedings before they even started. You showed contempt for this court, for the law, and...
The case goes viral. Millions of views. Debates over the judge's firmness. Ashton pleads guilty federally. Serves 4 years. Pays restitution. His luxury life ends. But first, he completes the 100 hours under Sarah. She later reports real change. Meeting dying children, seeing families' resilience, witnessing her grace. On his last day, he offers a sincere apology she accepts. Redemption begins, not overnight, but through hard-earned perspective.
For the victim. For that, I am sentencing you to 100 hours of community service. His lawyer started to object. Your Honor, that is highly unusual. I am not finished, I said. Those 100 hours will be served at Rhode Island Hospital in the pediatric oncology ward under the supervision of Nurse Sarah Chen. You will mop floors. You will clean bedpans. You will see what real work looks like. You will see what Ms. Chen does every single day. And maybe, just maybe, you will learn something about respect. The courtroom erupted. People were murmuring. Some were actually clapping. My bailiff had to call for order. But I still was not finished. Furthermore, I said, I am fining you an additional $10,000. That fine will be paid directly to Ms. Chen to compensate her for the wages she lost coming here today, for the emotional distress you caused her, and as a reminder that actions have consequences. Ashton's jaw dropped. $10,000? You cannot do that. I just did, I said, and if you want to appeal, go right ahead. But here is what will happen. That video you posted will be Exhibit A. Your arrest for DUI will be Exhibit B. And
The judge reflects. Justice isn't just punishment. It's teaching, protecting the vulnerable, ensuring equality before the law. Sarah thrives, using funds wisely, focused on her work and kids. Ashton learned the hard way that money buys no immunity. The story underscores fairness in every courtroom, reminding us respect costs nothing but holds priceless value. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.